What's up YouTube? Ryan, aka The Lucky Schmuck, back here again with another video for you guys. Today, I want to talk to you guys about how to get the most money for your used aquariums, stands, filters, even livestock. I have 5 great tips for you that hopefully will teach you how to get the most money, whether you're getting out of the hobby for good, maybe you're upsizing, maybe you're downsizing. Regardless of the reason, these 5 tips are gonna help you maximize your profits when you're selling your used aquarium stuff. I actually keep an Excel spreadsheet with a transaction for every single thing you see in this fish room that I bought, sold, and traded since the beginning of the year. And one day I may do a video on that. You don't have to get as OCD as me. I think that just watching this video, you'll take away a lot from it. I've also learned that not only selling things, but buying things for a great price is also a great way to keep your costs down. So I'm gonna put out a separate video about how to buy things for the best price. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that video. Before I even get started with number 1, I want to talk about the most important thing. I consider it step 0 and the thing that you should think about the most before you even get started. And that is decide how much effort you want to put into this. Depending on how much you do those 5 tips, you may maximize your results. However, it may not make sense to do all 5 for every one of your items. You may just want to do 1 or 2 and sell it quick. So keep that in mind, that how much you put into selling the item is how much you're going to get out of it. Tip number 1, do your research. Before you end up listing your item, see what other items are going for, whether it be locally, online. Get an idea for the market of your item. Is this something that people are looking for? Maybe there's posts, people are asking for them. It's a rare fish. It's a pretty common size tank, like a 55 or a 20-gallon long or a 40 breeder that are usually in high demand. Is this something that is maybe gonna sit around for a while, like an hexagon aquarium, or something that may be more niche, or something you know is a really expensive item? Perhaps you have a saltwater piece of equipment or something that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars new, and you want to make sure there's a market there. We all know, or if you don't know, you're about to find out, in this hobby, when you buy things new, kind of like a brand new car, the price plummets. And because that price plummets, people who are buying used equipment, it's great. When you're selling it, not so great. But do your research first. You may be surprised. You may be able to recover a good amount of money, or you may be looking at, somewhere half or less of what you originally spent. But make sure you do your research first and get an idea of what the market is for the item or similar items that you are selling. When doing your research, keep in mind that some people will post things at a ridiculous amount of money. If you're looking at Craigslist or eBay or one of these other apps that I'm gonna get into later in the video, try to see what things have sold for as opposed to what someone's asking for. Because a lot of times people have prices that are sky high. So try to get an idea of what things have sold for when you're doing your research, and get an idea of where you want to be. Do you want to try to sell it quick? Because keep in mind that obviously the lower your price, the faster your item may sell. I'm going to show you some tips that will help you keep the price high and also hopefully sell the item fairly quickly. Tip number 2. This is probably my favorite tip and what I think separates me from the rest of the people in my area when it comes to selling equipment for a decent price and selling it fast. For this tip, I actually want to bring you guys to this tank I have right here, because it's something I just picked up today, and I think it's going to help me illustrate tip number 2 perfectly. Tip number 2 is staging. So what I think separates me from most of my quote-unquote competition is how I stage my tanks. As you can see here, this tank is set up with a light on, it's filled with water, it has some decor. There's no gravel and there's no fish in there, and that's kind of on purpose. We'll get to that in a minute. It has a light, it has a filter, it's on a stand. There's no heater, but that's something I actually need to add. If I had a bubbler, I would throw that in too. And the reason is because something that is nice and clean and operational just is more appealing to the eye. So if you have your tank that's been in your garage and it's dusty and it's all clunked up and things are in bags and dirty, you're just not going to get as much money for the tank. Simple as that. You can sit there and spend a little money cleaning it and probably get a lot more for it. but that depends on what your effort level is. This filter I actually had laying around, and I just added it to this tank because it kind of makes it a more complete package. Essentially, I could sell that filter by itself, but it's kind of a low priority item. I don't get a bunch of money for it. I could sell it fairly easily, but when I make a package with a tank, I can sell the whole package for more money than I could have with the individual pieces. Now, here's a really important tip. Like I said, there's no gravel in this tank and there's no fish. That's actually on purpose. I could stage it with some gravel and some fish if I wanted to. However, most people want to do their own thing. So I have a bunch of gravel over here in my garage, different color gravel, that I'll just throw in usually if someone buys a tank from me. I may stage it with some gravel. I usually put some decor in there. I actually have some fake plants kind of floating in here. I usually keep fake plants in my fish room just for that purpose, to stage a tank. I find that a tank that has fish, someone has to be a very specific buyer for that tank. Meaning that if I had a bunch of Oscars in here, now the person buying this tank actually would pay less because they have to do with these Oscars that they don't want, okay? Whereas I don't have anything in here. So if you wanted to put guppies, they could do that. If they wanted to put their own Oscars, they could do that. People just don't pay for fish. Now granted, maybe you have some very fancy fish that have a great, market. Even in that case, I would recommend sell the fish separately. If you're getting rid of a tank and you have it all set up, my advice, get rid of the fish first by themselves if you have the time, and then clean the tank and sell the tank. In a similar situation like this, you will maximize your money and it's not that much more effort. Now, staging works for more than just tanks. If it's a smaller item, just make sure you take a clear picture of it in a well-lit area, usually against a nice solid background, and make sure that it's clean and that you are very descriptive with that item. I do want to show you a few more tanks that I've staged to give you an idea of how I do what I do. You'll notice that I try to match stands and tanks. So if I ever have, let's say, a black tank on a brown stand, I try to make sure I find a brown tank to go with that brown stand. I also stage tanks sometimes. This is a 15-gallon I had staged that I ended up selling with some guppies. So I included some clown puke gravel, as they say. Most of the time, I stick with a more, classic, basic look with some basic fake plants or potentially some more neutral gravel and neutral decorations. It's also not a bad idea that when listing something to give individuals options. Maybe put the price for the tank and everything with livestock at one price, and maybe list the tank and the livestock separately at another price. Whenever mentioning a price in the ad, I always go with the lowest price of anything I'm selling in that ad. So let's say the full setup for my tank is $300. However, I'm willing to let all the livestock go for 40 bucks. I'll list my ad for $40, and then when they come to my ad, they can see, okay, the livestock is 40 and the whole package is 300. What I don't prefer doing is just listing everything for $1. I feel as if that kind of brings in more traffic, but the wrong type of traffic, and it ends up not serving you in the end. My number 3 tip is to diversify. Just like I've diversified the fish room with this 125-gallon, I'm gonna put some huge cichlids in, as well as some smaller tanks for some shrimp and live bearers. It's smart for you to diversify where you post your items. Perhaps it's Craigslist, perhaps it's Craigslist and eBay. Is it a tank? 55-gallon tank probably doesn't make sense to post on eBay when you can list it on Craigslist. However, just posting on Craigslist may not get you the exposure to different people who may be on apps such as LetGo or OfferUp. Keep in mind that the app Reddit and the subreddit Aquaswap are also great areas to post things for sale, either locally or around the world. So be aware of your options to post things in your area. Potentially you have an outlet at a aquarium club as well, but just be sure to post things, Facebook groups as well. The more you get it out, then the more exposure, more people your items will see. I skipped over this tank because it's so dirty. My fourth tip on how to get the most money for your used aquarium supplies is going to be respond. Make sure you are responding quickly to the inquiries to your ad. Make sure that since we know your ad is going to be really descriptive and you've put your measurements in there and you've included a brand name, if it makes sense to do so, you're still going to field some questions, and you want to make sure that you are quick to respond to these questions. You're upfront and honest to these questions. If for some reason there is some damage to the product you are selling, you'd much rather be upfront from the get-go as opposed to have to deal with an angry person when they get that item or perhaps when they show up to your house. So be responsive and be polite, and make sure that when it's Saturday morning and someone wants to buy a fish tank and they message 3 people, you're the first one to message them back. And the fifth, but not final tip, because I got a bonus one for you guys, is to negotiate. Don't be a bully, or don't get bullied like these Mbuna here that of course decided to hide. However, when the time is right, it makes sense to negotiate. If you list your item at the higher range of what you think you may be expecting, maybe after it's been listed for a few days, maybe a few weeks, depending on your eagerness to sell, you listen to offers and you negotiate. Now, keep in mind when negotiating, not everyone feels comfortable doing that, but I would say in your mind, stick to a price. Make sure that price is a fair one and don't go below it. If you're in a rush, well, then you have to do what's best for you. If you started at a pretty fair price, considering what things have sold for in your area recently, I would refrain from really negotiating in the first few days and see what's out there. You may be surprised at who contacts you. If you're enjoying these tips so far, or if you just like African cichlids, hit the like button and subscribe, and let's get into the final bonus tip. All right, guys, thanks for sticking with me to the end of the video. And as an appreciation, I'm gonna give you guys my bonus tip. Now, this is probably just as important as everything else, if not more, and that is be patient. When you're selling things, regardless of what it is, you need to have patience. If I could explain to you how many times I was frustrated, I had something listed for a few weeks at a decent price, and then boom, out of the blue, someone was in a position, it fit their need exactly, and it was a win-win for everyone. So prepare ahead of time, kind of have an idea of what your situation is, what your market is, and if at all possible, avoid a situation where you have to get rid of your tanks within a week or 2 period. Give yourself at least, a month or a few months if you're moving, lease expiring, etc. Plan accordingly. That way you can either maximize profits or at least rehome your fish properly. I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you guys stay in the hobby, but if for some reason you need to sell some used equipment, I hope this video helps you out. We'll see you in the next video.